In part 2 of the series showing how Hans Wormhat is a liar, I continue by um, following Hans down his rabbit hole. He will continue to deceive you, and he is very careful. He uses the word why instead of the word how. And he hopes that he can trick you by having you focus on why when really he knows that he is wrong because we are describing how. How things work is science. Why things work is a philosophical discussion.
The value of G is 9.8. Well, why? Why is it 9.8 and not 4.9?
Why it's 9.8 is because the way things work, this is where why and how can be used as a synonym, but we're really describing how it is 9.8 here on Earth. The amount of particles that have collected in the volume that we know as the Earth, the sphere of the Earth, those particle densities, those particle compositions are concentrated, and because every particle has a standard amount of influence on time and space, each of those particles pulls the space around it ever so slightly. But so many of them are concentrated in such a limited volume that as an aggregate, these particles can therefore influence objects that are not necessarily attached to the volume itself. Things on the surface that can move around are therefore influenced by the rest of the particles beneath the surface. So we are influenced by the particles on the other side of the spherical Earth, just as well as the particle just below our feet. But as an aggregate, the total direction that the particles combined influence, let's say you standing where you are, will cause you to fall in general towards the center of the Earth. Now, we are speaking of how, but in a way you can say that's why do we fall? But again, he's asking why on a fundamental level. So therefore, he's tricking you, oh listener. Watch the trick. Go.
Or not 20. Why is the value of G what it is? They won't have an answer for that.
Yes, Hans, we have an answer. And you have just told a lie.
So just because they have one fairy tale answer thrown in, oh, you don't know why objects fall only down. I'm fine with saying because God made this place in a way that makes sense. There's an up and there's a down.
You know what? I'm going to let you continue your lie. I'm going to debunk it in one fell swoop.
That's a perfect answer for me. I'm okay with that.
Okay. So you're describing down, but your description of down is arbitrary. Your description of down is why particles have these fundamental properties. Intelligent person can see that. So you're disrespecting the intelligence of your listeners. The idea that you can arbitrarily dictate what is down without understanding how the forces of nature work is the arrogance on your part. Yes, there is a down, and we know and we understand that down refers to what pulls us in that direction that we are being pulled. You want to arbitrarily simply point at that direction and say, oh, that's simply down just because it is. Well, again, you're going into the why. We're basically saying, well, how is it that way?
That's another thing too. They think that they can set their own goalposts for everybody else. I'm allowed to choose what's a convincing argument for myself. I find it very convincing.
And you just basically reaffirmed my previous point, is that you're being arbitrary. You can choose, but you're arbitrarily choosing. There is no justification for your choice. You're simply trying to manipulate your audience.
The argument that there's just an up and a down and it's the same for everybody else. And I find the Spaceball stuff laughable. And anyways, continuing, they don't have an answer for why. And that's where now probably they're talking about this Higgs boson stuff. If we can smash particles together and show you some CGI images, we can prove where gravity comes from or something. And it's just a bunch of sci-fi. They can always write whatever story they want and change their story. Notice that they're able to just make up whatever they want.
But that's not what they do. So you're telling another lie. What they're doing is they are doing experiments to understand how. And you could even say to a limited degree to figure out why. The theory that now is most effective, I guess, or most widely accepted is that the particles, the bosons and the hadrons and the leptons and things, the things that have mass, have an influence on the space around them by exchanging virtual particles. Once these virtual particles, they emanate from each particle like rays of light, but these virtual particles can influence each particle to respond to another particle when their virtual particles either crash into each other or are somehow impacting each other. And this is despite the fact, or because, I'm not quite sure, this is where it goes well over my head, the virtual particles have to stay in space for a very brief amount of time, but they are very pervasive in that short amount of time. So energy cannot be, I guess, gained or lost in such a manner as to disrupt the overall amount of energy in the universe. So these virtual particles come and go, but at some point they can come and go, and they're doing so at such a high rate that even within the short span of time that they exist, they interact with each other, and those interactions cause the fundamental particles, the hadrons, the leptons, and all of those to be pulled a little closer to each other every time their virtual particles interact. Now that's, to me, a theory that would be on the level of you, flat earthers, to say we don't know for sure, we're not sure, we're still examining that. But the scientists are not driven to try to force that theory to be correct, and that's my point here. Even as I try to explain it, I may not have the clear understanding. I may have said hadron when I shouldn't have, or maybe there are no leptons involved. However it goes, the general understanding I have, and the fact that this comes from scientific advancements and inquiries and analyses, that is what's going on. They're not just making up a story. So that's why I have to describe the steps for the listener, just in case the listener goes, well, gee, how are they not making up a story? What are they doing? Are they just crashing particles together for no reason? So there it is. What you have is your distorted interpretation of the Bible, which is weak at best.
They don't have an answer for. They do not have an answer for how these things come out.
Oh,
but they'll parade around like they have better answers. Where
whoa, they do have better answers, and there you go. You slipped up. You said how. You said how. Now the debunking of you and the breaking down of your lying ways can go much more smoothly. So now I don't have to interrupt you as much.
They're at the same place. They can't say why it's 9.8. And I'm just going to end this video with blatant lies. Scientism will blatantly give lies, but they're allowed to give lies and make it change stories and still pretend like everything they do is perfect.
You know what's so funny? You are doing the equivalent of deep state in American politics. Scientism is a fiction that you made up. And yes, you can pretty much say the scientism teaches lies, but the scientism that teaches lies is articulated by you. You're creating a fairy tale called scientism, and you are making your scientism fairy tale say certain things. You can make it say whatever you want. That's not what scientists and science says. But yes, your fictional scientism, i.e., your deep state of physics, your deep state of science, your scientism, it can do whatever you want. Illuminati, the devil, whatever it is, you're fabricating a lie, and you are attaching that lie to something that you want people to believe is what someone else is teaching. Yes, it's a straw man fallacy. I get it. But I want the audience to really understand what exactly you're doing step by step.
How often do you see viruses depicted like this? This is what viruses were. When I learned what a virus was, this is what they were. Nowadays, with HIV virus and stuff, they show us these CGI blobs. Okay, which is it? Why didn't HIV look like one of these little bugs? Why does HIV look like a blob and not these crystal creatures?
Very strange. I mean, I think sometimes you have a mental disorder. You don't seem to understand distinctions. So there's no way that you could be an effective Christian Bible teacher. But let you continue.
They don't teach this anymore because it's a lie, but people still believe it. If you go talk to people about the bitter spot and the sour spot and the salty spot and the sweet spot, people still think that this is a real thing and they did experiments on it in elementary school. This was a big thing, people testing this out, but now it's known that this is a bunch of BS. So what's going on there?
What's going on is that they continue to learn, and we become more and more accurate in our understanding. And even if that means that we have had a misunderstanding prior, we correct our misunderstandings and not make excuses, period. With religion, the same process exists. Western American Christians like yourself were teaching that skin color denoted a sense of being cursed. It was widely taught. There were also teachings about women being not quite spiritually aware. And you taught a lot of things about the origin of Jesus, which was blasphemous, but which was taught in Europe and America over the years. And it was during the Enlightenment, which you will condemn as a period of blasphemy anyway. But your doctrine, your approach is from that. So the human capacity to make mistakes and correct them does not diminish the value of the truth that we have discovered. Continue.
Can people do a bunch of experiments, and they're doing experiments on a bunch of BS, and nobody calls it out?
You just told a lie. How can you do experiments on a bunch of BS? That doesn't even make sense. But again, you're using your voice, you're using your articulation of your words, you're rushing through your point, you're trying to carry the listener into your next point, which, go ahead.
The healthy eating pyramid. Look at the capstone removed.
Doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything that the capstone is removed. Again, you're manipulating your listening audience.
And this looks like some newer one. They have breads at the top. This, of course, is breads at the top is not the one that they taught us. Oh, they have some breads down here. They're whole grains. Ghost light of long dead stars. I remember in elementary school, they taught us that the stars were all dead. They told us that the starlight that we see from all the stars are long gone. That's what they taught us, and that doesn't make any sense. They don't talk about that anymore.
That doesn't sound like you were listening. I can imagine the teacher saying that the light from the stars had long left the star itself by the time it reached us here on Earth. And the way you just recited that, it sounds like you weren't paying attention in school.
But Hubble Deep Field, of course, will say stuff. But this isn't science. Going back to what science really is, you can't corroborate Hubble Space Telescope images, Hubble BS, and it's just mocked up images. And it's not science. And I guess I'll just say here, a lot of scientism is the religion of the lost, the ones who, yeah, they're just lost. And most of the people who push scientism, they aren't even really into it. That's not.
You are the one that pushes scientism in order to destroy people's faith in learning. Your goal is to cause people to doubt anything that they have been taught that is reliable and consistent, in order for them to become blind, ignorant acolytes of your right-wing philosophy that you try to pass off as Christianity. So where you make up your story called scientism, I'm going to rightfully identify what you're doing. It is not called Christianity. It's called partiality. It is a distorted variant of Christianity that is centered around elevating the right-wing evangelical conservative American as being, by default, always right, always preferred, always sanctified. And that is a destructive threat to the world, to society, and to God's word. So I'm going to continue my debunking of you. This is the end of part 2.